positive. They want to know if they are dead, if their dead was not positive, how come you are insisting? I'm sorry, I need to take this again. Sorry. So they are saying that there have been countless complaints branding these people as positive when they are not. And they have written petition to your offices, that's the Minister of Health office and that of NCDC. So they want to know what can be done. Why are you not releasing their corpse to them? Kogi State has denied sending any sample for testing. Where is the NCDC getting its sample? Thank you.
Good afternoon, all. My name is Friday Okerigbe. I'm a reporter with Channels TV. I'd like to start my question with the new guidelines for case management that the NCDC DG spoke about. I need clarification. I don't know if I got you well. You said antiviral drugs have been removed. If that is exactly what you said, I'd like to know if antiviral drugs have been removed from the management of a viral disease, what then are you using? I like to seek clarification on that. Then my other question goes really to the Minister of Health. Earlier this week, I think it should be on Monday or Tuesday, you told us about the number of bed spaces that we'll have in the treatment centers. You said about 5,000 from the 112 treatment centers. Yes, it's in your speech. From the 112 isolation and treatment centers across the country. So I did a little mathematics. We have over 11,000 confirmed cases. Where we subtract the discharge, those that have been discharged, and those that have suffered fatality, we subtract them, we have over 7,000 active cases as we speak. So if our bed spaces in the treatment centers are just 5,000, have you given approval for management of confirmed cases in private clinics, or where are the over 2,000 being managed as we speak? Then I also have a question for the PTF coordinator. I'd like to know, post-COVID-19, do we have a policy document that we can hold on to that is currently guiding the national response that you are leading? I'm saying this because I know that the Ministry of Health, in 2013, for instance, will have a national guideline for response to outbreaks of diseases. And also there was a similar one in 2018, which is actually a four-year document. Post-COVID-19, is the PTF National Response Coordination guided by a document that we can hold on to, or you're still developing? And unfortunately, we have the WHO country representative here. I'd like to hear from the WHO. Why was the use of chloroquine suspended? And now, just a few weeks after the suspension, we have resumed. What did you find out that led to the suspension and then the resumption of the use? Thank you.
Good evening, all. Rachel Abuja from the News Agency of Nigeria. My first question is to the DG NCDC. Sir, this study from Singapore was very clear. So I don't know why you're adding extra 4 days. Meanwhile, is it that we don't have compassionate drug in the country already? Or we are just trying to get these drugs as compassionate drug in Nigeria? My next question is for the chairman and my Minister for Information. Sirs, countries like South Korea, Germany, and Singapore, they have certain measures where certain measures were put in place to prepare the mindset of their nation workforce. It's called productivity readiness, to say. And now that we're in our second phase, going to the third phase, I don't know if we'll be preparing maybe our workforces through educative and inspirational programs that can be aired on television like twice a week or every day. to prepare their minds as we move into the new normal. Meanwhile, my third question is for the Minister of Environment. Sir, recently the United Nations Executive Director, Environment Program, described COVID-19 as a clear warning shot from nature. This means transformational nature readiness is needed in Nigeria as it is now. So I would like to know what your ministry will be doing in order to make Nigerians connect to nature and climate change, and of course, the people, so that in the era of this pandemic as such. So, thank you very much.
Good evening, the SGF ministers, DG and CDC, my colleagues. My name is Rahila Lassa, and I report for Voice of Nigeria. My question is for the SGF, and I want to know what the government is doing about the transport sector, because with the reduction in the number of passengers taken by public transport, the transport fare has doubled or more than doubled. So I don't know if the federal government is putting something in place to cushion the effect of COVID-19 on the public. Thank you.
Good evening, Chairman and members of the Presidential Task Force and Nigerians at home. My name is Mitaire Igben. I report for the NTA. I want to ask the SGF or the National Coordinator of the PTF. Now that the PTF is cascading the national response down to the subnational level, what are the plans for building the capacities of the state government? And who will fund the response? Will there be any assistance in terms of funding to the state governments for facilitating the response to the pandemic at the state levels? And for the Minister of Environment, what is the update on decontamination across the nation? For the DG of the NCDC, I want to ask, what are you doing to identify asymptomatic patients, since they present no symptoms and they probably walk around not knowing that they have the virus? Thank you.
Thank you. We have taken all the questions, and we'll be receiving responses from the Honorable Minister of Health, the DG NCDC, the National Coordinator, the WHO rep. Then we'll then take from the Honorable Minister of Environment, Honorable Minister of Information and Culture, before the Chairman wraps it up. Let's begin with the Minister of Health.
Thank you for the questions. Some of them appear to be related. If I understood Juliana properly, because you have to do your question 2 times, you're talking about those who are positive but say that they are negative. And it's connected to the very last question now. It's been said that a good number, perhaps up to 80% of people who are positive for COVID-19 will have no symptoms, or they have very mild symptoms, up to 80. So the symptoms can be so mild or none at all. And those who have no symptoms will not believe you that they are positive, because they look at TV and they see people collapsing, they see intensive care, they see people being intubated, and there's nothing wrong with them. So they don't believe you that they are sick. So you do have a problem trying to convince them that they are positive, and you are going to put them in isolation, not because they are sick, but because you want to keep them away from infecting others. So you do have that issue that people dispute their result, and in some cases you have to do the result 2 times or 3 times, and they still don't believe you. So some people can be asymptomatic that they are walking around and you don't know. Again, you also have the issue of people who test and they're positive and they have no symptoms and they think you are going to look for them. They run. They go into hiding or they disappear. So that's the question that you're asking, why the figures don't tally. The reason is that those who think you are going to trace them, contact tracing make it difficult because they don't want to go into isolation. You remember the photos we saw, the clips we saw from Gombe, where young men who were all positive in an isolation center were marching along the street disputing the claim that they were sick or that they had COVID. Those are the ones who have those symptoms. So you do have quite a very strange and odd picture presentation of this disease. Also, we say that the very old people will likely lose their lives, but there's also a report of a 103-year-old woman, 103, who had COVID-19 and survived. So you do have some who will survive, and also very young people who pass away. Then you have a picture of those who look very well, and then suddenly their condition changes. Within a day or 2, the next thing you hear, they're in distress, and before they rush to the hospital, it's late. So it can change dramatically and very suddenly. So the best thing is to err on the side of caution. Trust your doctor, trust the caregiver, and do what they say you should do, what is good for you, what is best for you, and not try and take your own decision by yourself, because we don't know enough about this disease to be able to be sure that we can take care of it ourselves. So the best thing is to trust your caregiver. Go into a center where you are isolated or where you are in treatment, and until you are told you are okay, then you can leave and go back to your house. So I think that answers all these questions about asymptomatic and isolation. Where are they? The reason is that they are not in the system. Many of them are not there. You can't track them, and that's the reason why we do have cases of community transmission going on.
So thank you, gentlemen of the press. A few questions here. Firstly is on healthcare workers and risk of infection. You know, right now we're doing everything possible to protect our healthcare workers across the country. But I do think that in the long term, there needs to be a much more fundamental change around how we deal with infections, infection prevention and control in our settings. And that change needs to really come at 3 levels. Firstly, our hospitals, both public and private, now really need to include personal protective equipment, the purchasing of it, in their procurement plans, in things that you have to buy to keep your hospital going. What we're doing now is simply a response to an outbreak. You know, managing logistics, sending around PPEs across the country. That's definitely not what we should be doing as a country. So that has to change as we refigure our health system to include this. And yes, these things are expensive, but you have to include it. Health care can become expensive, or whatever the cost is, it has to be factored into the cost of delivering health care. There's no point in having a hospital, a doctor, a nurse working if she can't have the personal protective equipment that she needs. So I'd like to answer that in that context. The second aspect is our doctors. You know, we've been saying this severally as we've managed small outbreaks of infectious disease across the country. But now there needs to be a much more fundamental change in our ability and use of PPEs. So we need to become comfortable with masks and gloves We need to push harder as doctors, as nurses, as medical lab scientists to ensure that there's running water in our clinics and insist on these things. Yes, it will take some time to get there because we can't solve the problems of 60 years in 6 weeks, but we have to start pushing on these things. And the third aspect is on people. Really, patients themselves. We are all patients. We can all become patients, and we have all been. When next you visit your clinician and he wants to examine you without a glove, I encourage patients to ask their doctors, why don't you wear a glove? And ask them and push them. So there's a much more deeper change that needs to happen across our sector that will start happening. And we're working on this as we try very hard to solve the short-term problem. We have a short-term problem. We're managing logistics of sending out PPEs across this diverse country. The states are buying their own. The private sector has done an incredible work. The UN family, everybody is working very hard to make sure we have the PPEs we need to work now. But in the longer term, we really need a different relationship, a much closer relationship with both the training and the materials we need to prevent infections. Secondly was the question on post-discharge management. To be honest, we're not suggesting people are discharged while they're still symptomatic. So we're talking about discharging people that are asymptomatic and have recovered. Either you are symptomatic and you have recovered, or you're completely asymptomatic throughout through your clinical episode. So at that point, you really don't need much more clinical intervention. Now, even at home, you just need time to recover. If you have been weak, if you're just like you recover from any other illness. So you're no longer a threat to public health at that stage. So you don't need any special intervention once you've been discharged. Thirdly, the work going on to validate test kits in Lagos. You know, in the middle of, there's no doubt, Lagos is the most affected from this outbreak. They have half the cases in the country. Of course, if you're affected the most, you would try harder to solve the problem. So if they're pushing on some of the research that we need to do to solve, make our decisions, we are grateful. So there's no conflict here at all between federal, state. Actually, you know, if you do the tests, and provide the data and show that one kit is validated, by all means, we will run with that. So right now, everybody is working together to ensure that we have the data that we need to make the decisions that we need to make into the future. On treatment of non-COVID patients, I think the Honorable Minister has answered that. I won't go into the issue around the sample from Kogi. I think we've done enough of that. And there was a question on the antiviral drugs that we've left out of the guidelines. You know, when there's a new disease, and this happens with every new disease, just that sometimes none of them attracts this level of attention, you first reach out for whatever you have. And that is really what we did at the beginning of this outbreak. So we reached out to some, antiviral drugs. One that was in our guidelines previously is the lopinavir-ritonavir combination, which is a drug we use, a combination of medicines we use for HIV. So we look for whatever we have to try. But as evidence emerges and science improves, then we have to start making hard choices. There have been quite a number of studies now that have shown that they don't really improve the outcome of this illness. So we've withdrawn them from the guidelines for management. However, we have kept them within the clinical trials so that we can study and see whether they work or not. And that's really the rational approach to this. So that's really what we have done, and why we continue to do the best we can. Remember, no drug has no side effects. Every drug has side effects, so we always have to balance the good it does with the harm it causes. I think that was it. On the use of drugs, this is the use of certain medicines is called the compassionate use of certain drugs. The fundamentals are still the same. You have to think that that drug works. And sometimes when research is still going on, you say, okay, you can use this drug on compassionate grounds when a patient is, doing very badly, and at that point, it really doesn't matter. You're trying something, right? And every clinician has the right to do that. That's a doctor's prerogative. When you have a patient that is very ill and is looking bad, you have tried whatever you have, and then you now use drugs that there's no evidence that they work, but you use it on compassionate grounds. And of course, they can still use any of these drugs on compassionate grounds during the appropriate circumstances.
I have a few questions. So the first one has to do with the curfew. Why did we change the timing for the curfew? So, as we all know, coronavirus is a respiratory viral infection. It moves from one person to the other. So, for you to get infected, it needs to move from an infected person to you. So, any measure that will interrupt that transmission, whether it's by putting physical distances between people, or reducing the opportunity of people meeting each other, or putting physical barriers such as masks, or keeping people away such as staying at home, will interrupt that transmission. And once the virus is unable to move from one person to the other, either of two things happen. It's either your immune system gets better and it gets rid of it, or people succumb to it. But whatever is the case, the epidemic stops. The purpose of the curfew is to reduce interaction, social interaction between people. It's not an election curfew. So by maintaining the curfew from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. initially, we were doing so at the beginning of the pandemic, where we were trying to address a host of issues. We've now moved to the next phase where we've reduced the hours. The 4 a.m. expiry for the curfew would have been 6 a.m., but we understand there are certain parts of the economy, especially in Lagos, where people have to start getting ready to go to work very early on, which was why we moved the 6 a.m. to 4 a.m. But we moved the 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. In order to allow the economy to continue to move, while at the same time reducing the risk of people congregating for social events, etc., and possibly transmitting the virus. So, at the same time, I very much appreciate the issue of domestic violence, the issue of emergencies, and the need for people to move around. And we expect the security services to respect the exemptions we have given. The IG of police has already requested that we write him formally explaining the various exemptions so that this can be forwarded to his men. And we'll be doing so, and will include the issue of emergencies. People should be allowed to get to hospital. If it's an emergency, it's an emergency. We're not zombies. So we expect the security services to be able to take that decision on an individual basis. We don't need to spell out every single emergency situation for the security services to understand that there's that need for movement. I think the only other issue I had was the issue of a national guideline on outbreak of diseases post-COVID. Well, hopefully post-COVID we're not going to have seasonal pandemic situations. At the moment, the guideline we have is sufficient enough to address our issues now. There have been other national pandemic response plans that include plans for influenza, etc. And coronavirus and other emerging infections will be included in that. But for the moment, we are facing what we are facing, and we'll continue to work with all parts of the society to make sure that this pandemic comes under control. Thank you.
Chair of the task force, honorable ministers and members of the task force, ladies and gentlemen, we were asked to elaborate on why hydroxychloroquine was suspended and why it has been reinstated. Just to recall that the use of hydroxychloroquine in the ongoing Solidarity trial on effective treatments for COVID-19 was temporarily halted by WHO on 25th of May 2020. And the trial was paused, or the use of hydroxychloroquine in the trial was paused after publication in the Lancet that concluded that hydroxychloroquine was linked to higher rates of mortality and heart toxicities in patients with COVID-19. The suspension was taken as a precautionary measure pending review of all the safety data by the Solidarity Trial Data Safety Monitoring Committee. This suspension lasted about 8 days. Yesterday, the Data Safety Monitoring Committee met, and based on a review of the available mortality data regarding the use of hydroxychloroquine for treatment of COVID-19 patients, and also considering information from a large trial ongoing in the UK, the recovery trial, where the Data Safety Monitoring Committee of that trial also reviewed their data. The members of the committee agreed that there was no cogent reason as to recommend the modifications of the protocol, and they advised that the trial should be continued as planned. The executive group of the study therefore decided, based on the advice of the safety committee, to resume the inclusion of patients in the hydroxychloroquine study arm of the trial. Just to remind the public, WHO continues to emphasize there is still no evidence that hydroxychloroquine or any other drug is effective in treating or preventing COVID-19. And to also remind that drugs are used strictly for the purposes of the trial, and self-medication continues to be recommended, that we should not embark on self-medication related to drugs for COVID-19. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Minister of Environment.
Mr. Chairman, members of PTF, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, members of the press, 2 questions. One, update on disinfection, decontamination, which is the simpler one, so let me answer that first. The second one, kind of intertwined with nature, humans, coronavirus and all that. Update on disinfection, decontamination is continuing. As I have said earlier, we're in all the 6 zones right now. In fact, tomorrow we'll be decontaminating and disinfecting the hotels where the colonies were kept. So we are doing this continuously. Our last sitting with the aviation industry is the critical one because of the nature of the industry. We just finalized that because they have chosen the kind of chemicals that they feel is compatible with their industry because of its nature of safety and security. That is done. We'll be moving on to schools. Last time I told you we have started, is ongoing. We will get a list, an extensive list perhaps, and share it to you in due course. Coronavirus, climate change, nature, people are all part of nature. Viruses are part of nature. And viruses can infect animals and infect humans. And coronavirus is said to be zoonotic, meaning it can traverse between animals and people. And research has shown, perhaps it came from bats or from pangolins. It's not unusual because bats also carry rabies. The same thing with dogs and foxes. And people go close to animals all the time. How it got to the first index or whatever, nobody knows how. But they are all part of nature. Climate change. We aggravated the issue of climate change, humans, because the world from the beginning was in perfect harmony with itself, balance. Land, water, air, amount of chemicals in the atmosphere in the correct proportion. Well, industrialization aggravated the situation, and now we are fighting the climate issue, trying to stabilize it. Coronavirus also, we know, in terms of nature again, in hot temperatures, high humidity, in the presence of UV, that sunlight, doesn't do well. Again, interaction between nature and corona, and then us. So what do we do? How do you resolve this? Right now, the best thing for us as humans is, one, to continue the effort of stabilizing the climate. That's being part of the climate action. As far as coronavirus is concerned, we must just simply adhere to the measures that have been put together, that we repeat on a daily basis. For now, is the best. But in the end, way after corona is gone, the climate issue will still be there. So the new normal that we say is, for now, to learn to live with corona, with all these measures, because we don't know exactly when the virus will disappear and will go completely, whether it's going to come back or not, we don't know that. But our best bet is to make sure we maintain all that was said, the social distancing, the hygiene, wearing the mask, all of that, until the foreseeable future. That is the new normal. And in climate change, that is what we also call adaptation and resilience. So if we are trying to adapt to climate change and become resilient, now we have to adapt to corona and also become resilient. In the presence of corona, still be able to move forward carefully without aggravating the situation, spreading the infection any further. Thank you.
Honourable Minister, Information and Culture.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the PTF, COVID-19, gentlemen of the press. I believe the question is whether Nigeria is planning to launch a national campaign to rally citizens towards productivity along the line of what's happening in South Korea. I think every nation will decide at the appropriate time what kind of national campaign is going to launch. The kind of campaign you are going to launch will depend on the kind of challenges you are facing and also your vision. At different times, Nigeria has launched various national campaigns, either against indiscipline or against corruption or against insecurity. And I remember that even during this administration, in the last 5 years, we've launched several campaigns, depending on what in particular is the challenge or what is the vision. When insecurity was the major problem in this country, I remember we launched a very successful campaign, even if I say so. If you see something, say something. That was meant to actually galvanize Nigerians, around them, and make them appreciate the fact that security is not just the job of the police or the military. At the point in time also, we had to launch another national campaign to give support to the military. That also was still running on our television. At a point in time, we were convinced that the major problem facing this country is that everybody is passing the buck. And everybody believes that, it's not my problem. And that's when we launched the Change Begins With Me campaign, which Mr. President graciously, launched himself. And since the advent of COVID-19, we can see that all our platforms, whether it be television, radio, newspapers, or even the social platform, have been awash with with campaigns. So really, a government will look at what is the major challenge or the current challenge and the vision of the government to launch a campaign. The campaign about productivity, this has been launched in several way and manner over the past years in Nigeria, and all I can assure you is that we'll watch and see what are our challenges and what are our visions, and we'll launch national campaigns that is going to embrace people, the whole nation. So in fact, even during the last administration, when we found that fake news was the biggest challenge, and it's probably still the bigger challenge we are facing today, we launched a national campaign against fake news, which took us to most newspaper, radio, television houses, and we sought and obtained their support. So really, it's not a one-off thing. You look at the temperature of the country, you look at what you are facing and where you are going, and you launch appropriate campaigns. Thank you very much.
We will now invite the chairman of the PTF to the podium. Yes, Chair.
Thank you so much. I thought most of the questions have been taken. There was one that had to, from AIT, I think it had to deal with evacuation. We just suspended the evacuation process because we are in placing a new protocol. And once that is put in place and all the logistics are also established, because you learn from experiences and through processes. At least we've received different evacuations now with a different protocol. We've seen the gaps, we've seen the challenges, and because of the evolving nature of COVID-19 in itself, as a virus and as a pandemic, protocols are changing all over the world. So we are putting in place a new protocol. Once that is established, and the processes for the implementation of that protocol is certain, the evacuation process would continue. So we appeal to our people, wherever they are on the face of the earth, to exercise more patience. We know they are eager to come back home. Some of them went on medical tourism to other countries. And after they've gone through their bouts of treatment, they want to return to their loved ones. Some are students who have graduated and are stranded. So we'll do everything to ensure that they all return home within the possible time available. But we want to do it seamlessly. We want to do it in such a manner that we do not inflict more hardship on them when they return home. Rachel, new normal, preparing the workforce. And your examples were Singapore, South Korea, and Germany, systems that are established citizens' participation and compliance very high. In my small life, I've had the privilege of traveling to all the 3 countries that you have mentioned. And as an ordinary citizen, either in pursuit of meetings or businesses or whatever it is, their systems are structured and tailored in such a manner that when there is a lockdown, it's lockdown. It's not when you will jump out to see who is out and who is not in. When there's a lockdown, there's a lockdown. That's how their system is. Singapore is a one-city nation. One-city nation. Very beautiful nation. Came out of a fishing community like Dubai or UAE. But today transformed, not because of any natural endowment, but because of the system that the leadership over the years have built and endowed. Do you know that in Singapore, you will not be admitted to the public service of the nation or civil service of the nation until you have worked in the corporate world? Because their public service is considered the most prestigious and most enabled system. That is why our immediate past head of service took a study tour. One of the first countries she went with a team of permanent secretaries to look at how the public service and the civil service is working in Singapore. Then within the African context, it was Rwanda. So I'm not saying that we will not try as much as possible to do things that we ought to do. But when it comes to comparisons, I'm always reluctant. I would compare vis-a-vis what I know can be in place and can be operational. In this regard, I received a proposal on master strategies for optimum performance and productivity for civil servants post-COVID. And when I looked at it, I knew that it was appropriate, and it's a thing that we should begin to use to retool our civil servants and public officers to be futuristic in their thinking, to think about optimal utilization of their time and resources to better service delivery. So over the years, even at our own modest level, we've had Servicom and all sorts of things in place. But as to operationalization, that is why sometimes we have challenges. And I believe strongly that that is one major lesson that will come out of the COVID-19 experience with. Because what it has done to us as a people and as a nation, and it has done to the entire world, is that it has exposed the weaknesses of every facet of our systems. Not only Nigeria, even the major economies. It has exposed the deficiency in their health structure. It has exposed the non-inclusivity of even the social net and the provision of resources. It has exposed even our governance structure. I always take delight when I listen to CNN and I hear the President of the United States contesting authority with governors and mayors of state. They've had democracy over the last 2 centuries, but they are still contesting as to who has the powers to apply in certain areas. So COVID-19 has even exposed those weaknesses. we are not unmindful of that. And I believe, like I said, if anything would happen to us as a nation, should be taking the experiences of all these deficiencies and defects that have been exposed and working on them to ensure that we build a formidable nation, resource the nation in such a way that everybody is not left behind. People are not left behind. So the matters of inclusivity, the matters of making sure that we drag and make sure that the ultimate goal of government is to provide for the security and the well-being of the people. And I believe in the past, like the Minister for Information said, we have in place a lot of things. But how responsive have we been to those things as Nigerians? The latest is the one by the National Orientation Agency, Change Begins With Me. A lot of Nigerians believe that change is a Buhari's slogan, and that he is the champion of change, and he is the one that will drive the change process. But the message of the National Orientation Agency says that it begins with each and every one of us. So what are you doing to create that change environment? I think that is something that we need to continue to look at. The transport view, you asked what will happen to the transport sector, because the passenger load has been reduced now. As a result, there is a hike in the prices. That is part of the problem that the entire world will be confronted with. Because of COVID-19 now, everything is in turmoil. Flying after COVID-19 will be one of the most expensive ventures, because if you are going to maintain social distancing, it means that what happens to the capacity of the aircraft has been built in such a way to accommodate 100 passengers. If you maintain social distancing, it will come, the capacity might come to about 50%. It will burn the same fuel, it will operate with the same crew, it will consume the same consumables. Who pays for the extra? So there's going to be a turmoil in the economy of the world. Nigeria, no exception. I'm not urging transporters to hike their prices, but it is going to be the realities of the time. And what government would have to do is what the central bank is doing now, creating stimulus against commerce, manufacturing, agriculture, to soften the effects of this turmoil that is being brought in the management of the economy of our nation. The last question has to deal with, now that we are ceding the management of the response, I think it was Mitare that asked that question. Now that we are ceding the management of the response to the states, who builds capacity and who does the funding? I have said it often and often, and I will repeat it again. Health is on the concurrent legislative list. All the 3 tiers of government on a monthly basis, from the Federation account, from the FAP meeting, collect the distributables, and they ought to apply it to the entire segment over which they superintend. Secondary health system is the responsibility of the state. Primary, through the establishment of the primary health care centers in the wards and villages, is the responsibility of the local governments. The federal government has a responsibility over public health matters in terms of policy drive, and also taking care of the tertiary University teaching hospitals, federal medical centers are tertiary institutions and specialized hospitals that you have all over the country that are established by the federal government. So it's a shared responsibility. And part of that responsibility comes with capacity building. So we are not giving them anything that it is not theirs. It is their responsibility. Correspondingly, federal government would support them as we have done. The Nigerian Center for Disease Control have been training people all over. They have gone all over the states trying to ensure that the laboratories are working. They are deploying resources, they are deploying everything. The test kits we are talking about, the PPEs we are talking about that are coming through the federal level are distributions that are done by the federal. But the states too equally have the corresponding responsibility to procure their own and ensure that it is put into use in all the medical facilities. So I believe it's a shared responsibility. The federal government will continue to support the states and the local governments. Right now, we are thinking about management even at the community level. But it's supposed to be co-owned with the local government, the communities themselves, and the state government, and the federal government giving the supervision that we ought to give. And that was the thrust of the guidelines we released on Monday. That this is the framework. But within this framework, as per your peculiarities in your various areas, structure a system that will work for you. The issue about places of worship generated a lot of, like Dr. Sani said, over 100 tweets about what kind of a decision is this. So we knew we were taking the right decision in the overall interest of the people of the nation. And you can see that the states themselves are beginning to micromanage the process within their states. Some said, we are not opening now because of what we see on the ground. Our decision is informed by the data of our communities and science, and we do not think it's a viable option to open now. Others have even given a timeline. I just saw a clip of the address of the governor of Lagos State. He has asked the mosque to start on the 19th and the churches to start on the 21st. So everybody is taking responsibility of driving the process because we are dealing with infection and transmission in the communities. And I believe that's where each and every action of individuals would count in this process. What you do and what I do will matter. And I will end, but just on a lighter mode. My older sister sent me a text this morning to say that, well, I have something I want to discuss with you or a document I want to drop with you. I would come to your office or to your house. I replied her quickly. I said, no, send it to my office and please stay at home. I urge Nigerians to stay at home. If you don't have any business being out, stay at home, stay safe, and keep well. And we will fight this virus and defeat it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That brings us to the end of the national briefing for today. Before we close, you would have noticed that we have a new backdrop. It came in earlier in the week, but today we want to acknowledge Mr. Patrick Otoro and friends that donated this as part of their social responsibility. We thank you very much, and we urge all the Nigerians to rise up to do something for the nation, for the people, for your community. Also behind me, you will find some signs. They came out of the signage factory of the Federal Road Safety Corps. They are delivering messages to Nigerians. We urge agencies, organizations that wish to have such signs to look inward, patronize the Federal Road Safety Corps, the signage factory, to produce this type of signs for your offices, for markets, for all public spaces. Well, a number of messages have come out of today's briefing. We'll focus today on the citizen in particular. As we continue to engage states in risk communication and community ownership, the time has come for the citizen to cooperate in contact tracing, testing, detection, and isolation. Let us be prepared to go into isolation when the result is positive. Do not go underground. Let us be responsive to policies and campaigns initiated by government. It is for the good of our nation. And as we cross the 11,000 mark, it is critical for us to break the chain of transmission to prevent further spread. Remember to wear your mask properly, not on your chin, not on the side of your face. Observe all non-pharmaceutical measures prescribed. Do not pick and choose. Now, this is to the whole nation. Please, some people are peddling contract papers. As has been said by the national coordinator, the PTF is not a procuring entity. It has not awarded, neither will it award any contract. If they offer you papers, contract papers to buy, alert the security agencies. They are fake papers and they are out to defraud you. God bless Nigeria. We hope to see you tomorrow by the grace of God. Thank you very much. I'm used to seeing our friends. We hope to see you on Monday by the grace of God.
Thanks for staying with the NTA. Today's briefing by the PTF has just ended. Before we continue with the news, let's rejoin Mitaire at the conference room of the SGF's office, venue of the daily briefing on COVID-19. Mitaire, the PTF has been looking into curbing the rate of COVID-19 infection at community level. I'm told you have the Minister of Information on standby. Could he speak to the issue of improved sensitization at community level?
Okay, I indeed have the Minister of Information and Culture, but he is a bit engaged. But before he joins me, and just to indicate that the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 today said there's a steady rise in maternal and child mortality rate in the country because of the continued refusal of health institutions to treat patients who present with other ailments apart from the coronavirus. And so this is because of the fear of health workers that some of these patients could present with coronavirus. And so this is resulting to that increase in maternal and child mortality. So the PTF continues to appeal to health institutions to attend to other health concerns apart from the coronavirus. Now I have the Minister of Information and Culture joining me right now, Alhaji Lai Mohammed. Honorable Minister of Information, now that the Presidential Task Force is cascading the management of the pandemic down to the state levels. What is the plan for community sensitization, for risk communication, and adaptation to the various guidelines for this phase?
I think we must be very clear. I don't think the PTF is actually abdicating its responsibility to anybody. But all we are doing is that we continue to provide leadership, continue to provide guidance. But there are certain issues that are better or best handled at state, local government level. That's what the government, the task force is doing in the latest guidelines. However, it struck at a very important point, which is risk communication and community management of communication. It's actually very, very important. You see, as of today, there's no known vaccine or medicine for COVID-19. So all we need to do, the only option left to us is the non-pharmaceutical intervention, which is wash your hands, keep social distancing, avoid mass gatherings, ensure that your hygiene regime is regular and it's okay. And this is where communication comes in. All this revolves around communication. But community involvement is key, because until and when the community takes possession and ownership in this fight, then we will not be as successful as we wish to be, as we wish. This is why we are asking the governors, in particular, to carry along the traditional leaders, the faith leaders, the various market women leaders, transport unions, all the major stakeholders in the state. You see, we cannot from Abuja here do this. For instance, each state has its own peculiarity. But the governor who has campaigned for election clearly understands the various constituencies that he needs to appeal to, whether it be the traditional rulers, churches, markets, mosques, motor parks, students, youth organizations, even what I call ethnic organizations in that state. And believe me, the success of this fight would depend largely on how we're able to enlist all the stakeholders. The National Orientation Agency, of course, is doing its own bit in the area where advocacy. But then, it is very important that the governors, the local government chairman, take ownership of this. What NO is doing right now, that as the only organization in Nigeria, charged with the responsibility of social mobilization, and with presence in all the 74 local governments, they are working with all the state governments, all the local governments to drive this. But they need more to integrate into a single team. And that is all those, you see, there's so many different people, that are preaching the same same language, the same message. But it would take the governors of the states and the chairman of the government to will them together into one single response. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. We're grateful. Yeah. So That's the response from the Honorable Minister of Information and Culture, Alhaji Lai Mohammed, on plans to strengthen risk communication about the coronavirus pandemic. It's back to you in the studio.
Thank you very much, Michari, for the reassurance. Moving on here, the Senate Committee on Niger Delta Affairs has commenced investigation into the alleged sacking of 20 management staff of the Niger Delta Development Commission. National Assembly correspondent Ignatius Mko reports on this and other committee activities at the Senate.
On Tuesday, 12th of May 2020, the Senate mandated its Committee on Niger Delta Development Commission to investigate the alleged sacking of 20 management staff of the Commission. 23 days after the investigation is on, the Federal Civil Service Commission and the legal team of the sacked staff were summoned for submissions.
There has been no reason whatsoever other than that the forensic auditing, which is on the ground, which has been set down, they are found as persons who are likely to interfere.
The committee demanded to find out from the Federal Civil Service Commission if an external forensic auditor has the right to suspend a staff.
The first question, because we have press, does an external auditor or a forensic auditor have the right to direct that 1, 2, 3, 4 staff be sent on compulsory leave?
The foreign service would have seen nothing like that.
I wanted to also hear that, well, on account of alleged gross misconducts, bordering on mismanagement of funds and what have you of the Commission, the officers concerned were queried.
We cannot overrule. We have no business with them. Whatever they do, it is up to their governing board.
The Federal Civil Service Commission, however, explained that parastatals have their own rules different from that of the Federal Civil Service Commission. The committee will be expecting the Niger Delta Development Commission in the next meeting. Meanwhile, the Senate Committee on National Planning and Economic Affairs has screened 7 nominees as members of the Revenue Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission.
And I want to assure you that there's a lot that we are bringing to the table.
So they should expect disciplined organization.
The report of the committee will now be presented at plenary for confirmation. From the National Assembly, Ignatius Mko, NTA News.
Meanwhile, the Senate Committee on Foreign Affairs has commenced the screening of 42 career ambassadorial nominees with a call to ensure enhancement of Nigeria's foreign policy objectives. National Assembly correspondent Abdullahi Aminu completes the report.
The list of the career ambassadorial nominees was contained in an executive communication to the Senate by President Muhammadu Buhari on May 6, 2020. The screening exercise by the Senate Committee on Foreign Affairs could have been completed within the 2 weeks deadline given to it. But for the lockdown in the Federal Capital Territory and closure of the National Assembly, that was not achieved.
Look at what the African Union is going to do and also what ECOWAS is going to do.
Is to leverage on our natural endowments and block the necessary leakages.
We have to go around all challenges and make sure we fulfill this legislative action.
In another development, the Senate Committee on Capital Market has successfully screened the nominees for the Director General and the Board of the Nigerian Securities and Exchange Commission.
With the training that I have, I am able to really look at a financial instrument and really understand its risk return.
With funds like this, we can fix all this our infrastructure.
Post-COVID-19 economy of the country was the topical issue that the senators said require more than casual attention of the board if confirmed by the Committee of the Whole. From the National Assembly, Abdullahi Aminu, NTA News.
And still staying with the National Assembly, the House of Representatives is alarmed by the rising cases of rape and other forms of violence against women in Nigeria. The issue, debated as a matter of urgent public importance, saw House members expressing deep concern while urging authorities to do more to put a stop to these acts of crime, following a motion by Representative Rotimi Agunsoye, who cited recent rape cases of Uwa Omozwa, Tina Ezekwe, and a minor in Jigawa State. The lawmakers urge states to hasten the domestication of the Child Rights Act and advise the Nigeria Police to establish special units to attend to cases of rape in all its formations. The need for relevant security agencies to bring to an end killings, armed banditry and kidnappings across the country was also adopted at plenary. The House wants the security forces to scale up response to avoid food insecurity, as such security breaches threaten cultivation of farmlands by farmers. The Abuja-Kaduna train service has received additional 10 new coaches and 2 locomotives to boost the movement of increasing passengers along the corridor. Let's now join Oyinaya Kaluoka for more.
It has been tales of anger and disappointment as passengers at the Edo station of the Abuja-Kaduna train service struggles for tickets. With 17 inadequate coaches due to rising demand from passengers, the service carries more than 4,000 passengers daily, a double of the 2,000 passengers it was meant to take. The delivery of the 10 additional coaches and 2 locomotives is expected to move supply to 27.
There will be better train services on this corridor because we are making the plans to increase our frequency from the current 8 to 14 so that we take care of the yearnings of our passengers.
With an advanced interior setting, the new coaches are modified for comfort, flexibility and safety. More spacious with enough leg room, separate charging points on each seat, hand washing section has been provided as a preventive measures against the spread of COVID-19.
This is the wash area. If a passenger comes in, even though they must have sanitized at the station, if they come in, they can still wash their hands here. We're going to put soap here. They can still wash their hands here before going to their seats.
Similarly, test running of the new coaches has kicked off at the Lagos-Ibadan train service. The trains are expected to be deployed for use when federal government lifts the ban on interstate movement. Oyinaya Kaloka, NTA News.
And in a related development, Director General, Nigeria Civil Aviation Authority, Captain Musa Nuhu has listed 5 airports that will be allowed to commence domestic operations on June 21st. A communication by the NCAA to flight operators states that the Murtala Mohammed International Airport, Lagos, Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport, Abuja, the Omogwa International Airport, Port Harcourt, Malam Aminu Kano International Airport, Kanu, as well as the Sam Mbakwe Airport, Owerri, now have approval to commence operation. According to the letter, other airports will be added gradually after a review and assessment. All flights to any of the airports outside the 5 approved to open shall comply with the existing COVID-19 protocols for approval. The NCAA boss emphasized that the closure of Nigerian airports to international flights will continue until the date of resumption is announced. Emergency and essential flights are exempted from the restriction and shall comply with the existing COVID-19 protocols for approvals. Suleiman in Kaduna is next in line.
And welcome to Kaduna Network Center. Jigawa State Government has handed over to their parents and guardians more than 1,300 Almajiri pupils earlier repatriated from the neighboring states in the wake of coronavirus pandemic. Governor Muhammad Badar Abubakar, who stated this while briefing newsmen in Dutse, ordered the enrollment of Almajiri pupils into a formal education as soon as schools resume in the state. Muhammad Musa Askira reports.
In total, 1,345 Almajiri peoples were repatriated to Jigawa State from Kano, Bauchi, Plateau, and Nasarawa State, occasioned by the coronavirus pandemic at the end of March this year. Out of this number, 130 were tested positive for COVID-19, with 107 already recovered and joined the rest who were handed over to their parents, while the remaining 23 are still at isolation center waiting for their recovery results.
We have directed the enrollment of those discharged into primary schools to commence Western as well as continue their Quranic education.
Governor Muhammad Badr Abubakar noted that the new cases being recorded in the state now are from contact tracing rather than imported ones, a development he attributed to the well-coordinated response of the state task force on the dreaded viral infection. The governor, who described as impressive the state fight against COVID-19, added that the establishment of a molecular laboratory for the disease, which has been on test running for a while now, will enhance the fight against the disease.
As we loosen up and relax lockdowns, we must observe social distancing, personal hygiene, as well as the use of face masks while in the midst of public.
To ensure that community transmission of the disease is not witnessed in the state, the governor has again extended the work-from-home order by 2 weeks, even as the lockdown order was lifted on most of the places affected. From Dutse, Muhammad Musa Askira, NTA News.
And Zazzau Emirate Council in Kaduna State has organized sensitization on coronavirus for district heads with a view to promoting adherence to COVID-19 safety protocol. Emir of Zazzau and Chairman Kaduna State Council of Emirs and Chiefs Alhaji Shehu Idris reminded participants of the need to take the campaign to the grassroots as a way of containing community spread. Mudashiru Aliu's report is here presented.
With coronavirus still ravaging the health condition and lives of many people across the globe, Emir of Zazzau Alhaji Shehu Idris calls on the people to complement the effort of both federal and state governments, as well as all the relevant authorities, towards containing the spread of the disease.
It is pertinent to note that coronavirus is still in existence and ravaging the lives of people. Hence, general public are advised to take precautions so as to curtail the spread of the disease.
The Emir calls on the district heads and religious leaders to enlighten the general public on the need to comply strictly with the professional advisories by NCDC and state COVID-19 task force.
And with that report, the news continues with Hawa in Abuja. Good evening.
Many thanks to you, Suleiman. Back here in Abuja, the federal government has clarified its stance on the removal of subsidy on petroleum products in Nigeria. Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Zainab Ahmed, speaking on Good Morning Nigeria, explained that all subsidies were removed in response to current economic realities. The minister, alongside other economic experts, discussed the economy under the Buhari administration. Oluseye Adeabu has more.
Fuel subsidy has been removed completely by this price modulation. That's one of the opportunities provided by the crash in the crude oil price and the coronavirus pandemic, and we took the opportunity very, very quickly.
Minister of Finance and National Planning Zainab Ahmed also said government is currently borrowing to build infrastructure while making efforts to aid a thriving business environment. Professor of Economics at the University of Benin, Mike Obadon, insists that conditions are more favorable for borrowing than in the past, as most loans obtained from international agencies like International Monetary Fund, IMF, are now concessionary.
They are borrowed from multilateral institutions which provide loans on relatively soft terms, very low interest rates, sometimes moratorium, and on very long term.
Other guests say 5 years counting, the administration of President Muhammadu Buhari has shown sufficient commitment in fulfilling its promises.
The blind will see that corruption has reduced tremendously in Nigeria due to the fiscal measures that government has introduced in managing public funds.
A lot of policies have been put in place, and of course we have seen them working.
Respondents on Good Morning Nigeria Twitter handle also applaud the administration for efforts at stabilizing the economy in spite of the unstable and dwindling crude oil price and the impact of the coronavirus pandemic. In Abuja, Olusheye Adiagbo, NT News.
Secretary General, Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC, Dr. Mohamed Sanusi Barkindo is categorical that the rebalancing process of the global oil industry may be longer than anticipated under the prevailing uncertainties, downside risk, and given that global inventories appear to be continuing to build, although at a much lower rate than the record pace of late March and April 2020. The OPEC boss at the 133rd meeting of the Economic Commission Board held virtually, however, expressed optimism that the actions taken by OPEC Plus in April stopped short the race to $0 oil. In his words, Barkindo said, the decision taken by our members and our partners in the Declaration of Cooperation has been pivotal in reducing volatility and bringing back some semblance of stability to the market. No individual stakeholder, Dr. Barkindo added, can have all the answers. It is only by reaching out and deepening the dialogue between reputable institutions that we can provide a better and broader sense of the rapidly evolving energy landscape. The OPEC, he stressed, will continue to work closely with the International Energy Agency, including regular consultations and with International Energy Forum to ensure open lines of communication between producers and consumers. And Ibadan is where we go next with Kemi as our guide. Hello, Kemi.
And welcome to Ibadan. Park management system is one of the reforms conceived and implemented to sanitize the activity of public transport management in Oyo State. Dayo Gushola in this report takes a look at the new measures, its challenges and benefits.
Violence and disturbance of public peace were some of the worrisome features of junior workers in motor parks in Oyo State. The chaotic nature of the sector had been largely attributed to lack of proper regulation on their activities by government. More worrisome was the uncoordinated process of fee collection, which was prone to various forms of abuses, leading to violent protests from motorists. With the introduction of new concept of management, which no doubt refined the fee collection process, are the stakeholders doing differently.
We are teaching them the art of decency and public comportment. No more will it happen that you will find a park manager struggling with drivers.
For the recalcitrant members, how resolute is the state government to the new order?
So we are working is bottom up now, and then we now imbibe that in the park management system.
When you see something that's been done that's violating the law, make sure you reach out to government. And once we hear that, we will take a decisive action.
Although the initiative is a sure way to sanitize the transportation sector, the implementation and monitoring required that all stakeholders must be on the same page. In Ibadan, Dayo Gunshola, NTA News.
The Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 has pledged to support Ogun State with funds for management of the pandemic in the state. Executive Director, National Primary Health Care Board, Dr. Faisal Shaib, who led a team of the Task Force on Assessment throughout to the state, made the pledge during a meeting with the state governor. Adeni Taiwo completes the report.
Apart from recording the index case of COVID-19 in the country of February 27, Ogun State, with about 280 confirmed cases, is one of the states worst hit by the virus. How well the virus is being managed in the state, which shares boundary with Lagos, the epicenter of the virus, and international border with Benin Republic, is of major concern to the federal government, therefore necessitating this visit by a team from the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19, led by the Executive Director, National Primary Health Care Board, Dr. Faisal Shaib.
We're going through a process of adjusting the 2020 budget, and we're looking at how we get
resources to support the states, because a lot of the states have sort of budgetary constraints, and some succor will be coming to the state.
We have started with community engagement in having different activities to further reinforce our people that are better off going to the PHCs as going to the patent store.
The team was later taken on an assessment tour of isolation centers and other facilities used for the management of COVID-19 in the state. In Abeokuta, Adini Taiwo, NTA News.
And that's it from here. It's back to you, Hawa.
Thank you, Kemi. We sincerely apologize for the unsteady pictures from our Ibadan Network Center. The Nigerians in Diaspora Commission has engaged the Embassy of Lebanon over the continued detention of 10 Nigerians. Abubakar Usman Akwanga reports that the Director General of NITCAM, Abike Dabiri Erewa, during a visit to the Lebanese embassy in Nigeria, opened fresh discussions on labor relations between unskilled Nigerians and Lebanese citizens.
The visit was necessitated by speculations making the round on the detention and molestation of Nigerians in Lebanon and efforts to secure the release of the 10 Nigerians deboarded from an earlier flight from Lebanon to Nigeria. Abike Dabire says NITCOM is concerned over the security and welfare of Nigerians in Lebanon and thereafter sought for mutually beneficial terms of labor and the safety of Nigerian citizens.
The ambassador said the issue of even the workers' permit needs to be properly looked into. Agents are there collecting money, making money, and not seeing to the welfare of these people that are going to work there. So our ambassador in Lebanon has done very well, and we thank the Lebanese ambassador for the steps they've taken, and we hope that we'll put a stop to all this issue of Nigerian girls being treated anyhow in Lebanon.
Lebanese ambassador to Nigeria disclosed that the deportation of 59 Nigerians was facilitated and sponsored by Lebanese community in Nigeria and assures of the safe return of the remaining 10 as soon as they are cleared of allegations of criminal acts.
The reason was that there are cases against them, pending cases. So we couldn't clear them because of the short time that we were acting through. We were not able to bring them, to clear them, to get on the flight.
The ambassador promised to investigate cases of alleged human rights abuses on Nigerians by Lebanese and also work on improving best international tenets that will improve diplomatic ties between both countries. In Abuja, Abubakar Usman Akwanga, NTA News.
Learning from successes in the recently implemented Special Works project in the 8 states from the 6 geopolitical zones of the country, the federal government has expanded its job creation program to all 774 local government areas in Nigeria. The National Directorate of Employment, NDE, will be implementing this project as part of government's intervention to rebuild the nation's economy post-COVID-19. Onengie Finefish reports.
Federal Government Special Public Works Project is initiated by President Muhammadu Buhari to cater for unemployed youths at the grassroots. A total of 54 billion naira is earmarked for the program. 1,000 Nigerians and 3 supervisors from each of the 774 local government areas of the country will benefit from the program.
The fact that we did the 40,000 across 8 states as a pilot study, the way we did it, Mr. President was so impressed. He said, okay, why not cover the whole 774 local governments? And this is the basis of what we are trying to do now.
Beneficiaries will receive the sum of 20,000 naira each, while supervisors will get 50,000 naira each for a period of 3 months.
To you or to me, 60,000 naira is nothing. But for somebody living in a rural area, he can use that if he's a farmer to buy water pumping machine or maybe to start their own businesses. That's the essence. So as far as I'm concerned, given 774,000 young men and women that are unemployed without any formal education, a job, it will go a long way.
The program is designed to provide maintenance for federal, state and local government facilities and the environment. In Abuja, Onengie Fineface, NTA News.
We'll now take you to our Maiduguri Network Center with Abubakar as our guide. Hello, Abubakar.
Hello, Hawa. It's really good to see you, and thank you for joining us. Borno State Governor Professor Babagana Umara Zulum has reiterated his administration's determination to ensure the lives of the citizenry are protected for the achievement of a peaceful society. He stated this at the inauguration of Borno State Community Policing and State Community Policing Advisory Committees with membership drawn from all segments of the society. Memuna Garba reports.
Represented by his deputy, Umar Usman Kadapur, said the state is willing to cooperate with the Nigerian police to create an enabling environment for the security personnel to work in harmony with various members of the communities in which they operate.
This initiative should not doubt go a long way in reducing the rate of crime, especially Boko Haram insurgency, which requires more robust community effort along with law enforcement agency to contain.
Inspector General of Police, represented by DIG in charge of logistics and supply, Amin Chibaraya, said community policing is important and will help in the formalization of ideals and principles for more proactive, efficient and effective community policing in more challenging situations. The State Commissioner of Police, Mohammed Ndatso Aliyu, said the present security arrangement in the state, which involves civilian JTF, hunters, traditional rulers, and all stakeholders in the fight against insurgency, made it easier to implement community policing in the state and appealed for more support and cooperation. State Attorney General and Commissioner for Justice, Barrister Kakashewu Lawan, commended the initiative, saying it will help tackle insecurity in the state. The two committees comprised of traditional rulers, security agencies, CSO, NLC, NBA, NUJ, NDLEA, and community leaders representatives, among others. In Maiduguri, Maimuna Garba, NTA News.
The National Orientation Agency in Borno is on a mission to mobilize urban dwellers and the grassroots population in continuous practice of the various COVID-19 prevention tips as part of an effort to check the number of new cases that has kept rising on a daily basis. It is in the light of this that the NOAA, Borno State, embarked on a motorized sensitization campaign across Maiduguri metropolis, targeting public places, traditional institutions, and religious bodies. Jetwa John Jesney reports.
The National Orientation Agency, known for various education and enlightenment activities across the country, targeted community mobilization to bring public up to date on government policies and programs relating to eradication of the coronavirus pandemic. The National Orientation Agency noted that relaxation of the lockdown, one of the measures to manage and contain the pandemic in the state, does not render the state COVID-19 free, as it is still on the increase. Emphasis was placed on regular hand washing, use of face masks, and observing social distancing at all times, in addition to other personal hygiene measures. The agency believes that incorporation of tricycle operators, the traditional institution, as well as religious bodies, among others, in the awareness exercise will go a long way in relating the good intentions of government as regards the existence of the coronavirus pandemic in the state and measures for prevention.
We have structured it this time to capture the issue of the moment, which is the fight against coronavirus. There are several accessible local governments that we intend to cover within the remaining 1 week, inshallah. We are mobilizing our community from the bottom to the top approach.
The National Orientation Agency is of the opinion that campaigns such as this will go a long way in reminding the people on the presence of COVID-19 as well as the need to minimize its spread across the state. In Maiduguri, Jetwa John Jason, NTA News.
Thank you, Jetwa. You're watching Nationwide from Maiduguri. Time now to return to Hawa in Abuja for more stories. Do enjoy the rest of the evening.
Very well, Abubakar. And moving on, a meeting of attorneys general of the Federation in the 36 states with heads of courts and that of the FCT has resolved to create a working platform that will ensure improvement in the nation's justice system. This came from a virtual conference which Judiciary correspondent Femi Okewo monitored for NTA.
Even before now, reforms have been an integral part of Nigeria's justice system. But more so now, with the coronavirus pandemic changing the mode of various activities. The virtual conference organized by the Federal Ministry of Justice brought together the Attorney General of the Federation, Attorneys General of all the 36 states of the Federation, heads of courts in the country, and the FCT, and the Solicitor General of the Federation. Areas of the nation's justice system which the body will tinker with in the light of the influence of COVID-19 include virtual court hearings, decongestion of correctional centers, particularly of awaiting trials, decentralization of correctional services, and implications of various legal and statutory measures on our justice system and their constitutionalism.
As stakeholders, we have a duty to ensure that the pandemic is not allowed to bring the administration of justice machinery to a halt.
If there is effective coordination, we can solve the problem of overcrowding of our prisons with our waiting trial population.
Virtual court hearings are no contradiction to the provision of the Constitution, which says that court hearings are supposed to be in public. If anything, experts say that it enhances that provision. And so, this conference by the Attorney General of the Federation and the Attorneys General of State sets the stage for whatever subsequent changes there are going to be in Nigeria's justice sector. In Abuja, Femi Okewu, NTA News.
Okay, the Eastern Naval Command says improved patrol strategies has yielded results in the reduction of pipeline vandalism and other unwholesome activities in the maritime domain. Retired naval officer Rear Admiral Obonu Ekwe said this at the Eastern Naval Command 2020 Nigeria Navy Week ceremonial sunset in Calabar. Justina Etim reports.
These are highlights of the 2020 Nigerian Navy Week ceremonial sunset marked by the Eastern Naval Command. Though ceremonial sunsets are usually elaborate, this year's ceremony witnessed a skeletal parade due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Speakers at the event recount numerous achievements of the command which have facilitated maritime security and economic prosperity in the country.
Your efforts led to the arrest of numerous vessels, persons, and seizure of petroleum products, as well as metric tons of crude oil.
Officers of the command are also charged on professionalism and integrity, as well as teamwork to move the Eastern Naval Command forward. Part of activities for the Nigerian Navy Week were the distribution of palliatives and personal protective equipment to officers to prevent the spread of COVID-19. In Calabar, Justina Etam, NTA News.
We'll take another break now. More reports when we return.
25th February 2020, Nigeria. It is real. It is a nightmare. It is killing people all over the world. It is COVID-19. Compliance with the various states in Nigeria, the current measures will flatten the curves. Shutting down is not an act of wickedness, but an act to save lives. Stay home, stay safe. Observe social distance. Always put on a face mask while leaving your house. Make sure you are on a tricycle alone. Cars and buses cannot carry more than half their passengers. Always remember to wash your hands. Together, we will defeat COVID-19. This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency, Nigerian Film Corporation, powering possibilities.
As a strong immune system increases the chances of victims surviving COVID-19.